So I would admit that I am wrong. Communicative translation, it's not only just translating what is the given text into the target language, but there is more emphasis on the message to convey the message, the real message of the text. So I would admit that I am wrong. So in the translation to Bisaya, murag na siya heartfelt ang iyahang pag-translate, no? So, ako adyong gibati nga mali jud ko, sayop jud ko. Naka-experience na siya. Too much with examples na lang kay ragamay katag time. Okay. So that's it. The exact message of the song, the text. Local translation strategy. One example here is the direct procedure. So we have read the meaning of the literal translation, transference, translation loan. So we will know the meaning of the text later on. And the second is indirect procedure, naturalization, equivalence, and shifts. Okay. Direct procedure is under it is the literal translation is ideally the segmentation of the second language translation into individual words and target language rendering of those words segmentations one at a time, or word for word translation. So you see, literal translation and word for word is almost just the same. So it's here, they are just similar. Literal translation and word for word translation.
New car.
Example, new. How will you translate in a literal way? The
because
new,
this is
bago.
Compound word siya kanang i-combine ang two words in to make the one.
So for example, literal translation, when you translate new, you say bago. Car, sakyanan. New car, bagong sakyanan. So literal. Word for word and literal.
So next, transference translation. So is the process of transferring a second language word into a target language text by adjusting the word's pronunciation.
So transfer.
Transfer. So how to transfer? Transferring second language into target language text. So halimbawa, process. And process, proseso. Computer. So this word has no equivalence in other language. Mao gani siya o baga kaning anang technical term. Like computer. You cannot say in kuan nga
some words Tagalog. Some words man good kay we don't have our translation, like Bisaya translation for the word. So sometimes we just borrow the words. Like for example about process. So in Bisaya term, process, the way you pronounce the word process, like that. In English, process, like that. But when Bisaya, when you translate it, there's no other way of translating it but in the pronunciation. So process. Computer, like in Bisaya, computer, stop, diba?
Sa pronunciation na siya.
So that is how you translate the second language into the target language.
Transference translation. So next, translation loan. So is transferring the second language into target language word literally. So literal, in literal. Basta, the same rin siya ito ang what we have talked about the previous literal translation loan. So number 4 is naturalization. So basically transference in which you apply target language spelling and morphology and pronunciation to the expression or to the word in the questions.
Example, the process. You said proceso.
Oh, yes.
Naturalization.
Naturalization naman siya. So, computer. So, next. So, indirect procedure. Okay. read through.
So equivalence. Focus on equivalence in meaning in the perspective of the reader of the target text. This means that you may sacrifice equivalent in form, or you may have to choose something which is not exactly the same thing as in the source text, but the closest in the target language. How do you understand that, Jim?
Equivalence. So let's see that.
So equivalence is divided into cultural
Cultural.
equivalent, functional. Maybe we will more understand equivalence through this. Cultural equivalent,
Descriptive,
functional equivalent, descriptive equivalent,
reduction
synonymy,
application.
reduction.
So next is cultural equivalence. So translating a culturally rooted in the source text language with roughly equivalent culturally rooted word of the target language text. So meaning you can translate that context by the culture of the author of that context, or that the culture of that sana siya apil ang author or ang context language siya no ang equivalence sa ato sa into a translated kanang target language.
Sometimes na a word nga dira ra jud na siya nag-exist ana nga culture, dili na to masabtan ba nga lahi din na siya meaning. For example, kanang langgam. Mo ba? Culture ba na?
Langgam kay culture. Langgam in Bisaya, langgam in Tagalog.
Lahi.
Lahi culture sabay language mo puna, no? So next is functional equivalent. Translating a word in the source language text with a functionally equivalent target language word. For example, a word which has the same meaning. So the same meaning niya, so translating. So the same rani siya sa kuan unsa to? Atong dihatang example kaniya.
Desire.
Equivalence gyapon akan ng study of meaning gani sa to.
Semantic.
Semantic. So the same ra gini siya. Equivalence ra gyapon sa word. So descriptive equivalence is translating a source language text word using description of the concept it refers to in the target language. So translating a source language text words using description of the concept it refers to in the target language.
Sometimes it's more understandable if you will give the description of the word. So mas mutaas-taas pa imong translation noon sa original text.
So description. So meaning the description of the words.
The text or the word.
So okay. Next is a synonymy. Synonymy meaning the same function, the same meaning. So translating a source language text word of expression with a target language expression that is nearly. So kanija is different niya sa descriptive, no? O sa semantic, no? Kanija is mura siya expression lang. Although dili siya exactly nga dito siya kana ang equivalence niya, but related, no? Like for example, angry. Naapod siya gitawag og kanang annoying, no? Naapoy tawag og offend.
Diba? From the word synonyms.
Okay. Synonymy. But situationally, you can apply those words by situation. Like for example, yung offend. So it's something like nakay offend. Lahi po to mo yung mad, no? In situation. So by kuan siya ang basta kay synonymy lang siya, no? Although dili siya exactly equivalent sa ginamining nimo, but it is by expression related, no? It's connected. What is your point? So next, reduction, expansion, adding or removing elements in translation.
Sometimes it's necessary.
Necessary to reduce
Mm-mm.
the words, no? So,
I guess that's
okay.
sabotable.
Next, application, explanation of meaning in a target text. Explanation. So,
Amplify.
amplify.
You give more
Oh.
meaning, explanation to
Yes.
the target text,
Yes.
which is more like more comfy
Mm.
because you will understand more
Yes.
when you explain
Like
more.
example,
about the
barrio.
text.
Barrio in English, it's village, no? Village. So, when you're going to translate that in our target language, barrio, there is that this explanation, village, or
Barrio is like this.
Mm.
There are small people.
So isulod sa
living in
nimo
the
sa
village.
kuan kanang parenthesis, no?
Mm-mm.
Include mo sa context sa written. So compensation, so making up for the loss of something in the source text by adding something else in the target text. So shift, transposition, translation. It is a transposition, so translation of a source language text expression into a target language expression, which involves change in grammatical structures or in word class. So,
Shift.
shifting. So, meaning, murag siya ambak. Murag siya,
Change to
change
change.
gid siya. Change gid yung structure tanan. Next is the modulation, a change of viewpoint, substantial conceptual concept in the translation. For instance, using the name of a category for a specific member of the category, using a part for the whole, vice versa, active for passive, changing polarity, or etc. Modulation. So, what is your insight?
This is more kanang heavy to understand because it depends on the viewpoint of the person how you understand
The
the,
concept.
translation or the concept or the context of the text.
Mas lisod ni siya kay concept kaysa atong kuan idiomatical, no?
Mm-mm.
Next, componential analysis. This strategy is similar to the descriptive strategy. The difference is when the descriptive strategy used to translate the word that has relations with a culture, but the componential analysis use common words. So by culture gyapon siya, no? Componential. What is a component? Okay.
So you see there are a lot of translation strategies, translation meaning how you translate. It's not only a one strategy you have to how you will translate target text, diba? So we'll see the difference between translation and interpretation here. Let's start in defining interpretation. Interpretation is to facilitate oral or sign language communication. An interpreter is a person who converts a thought or expression in a source language into an expression with comparable meaning in a target language in real time. Example, interpret. Have you
Interpretation.
noticed the deaf school? Sometimes they
Yes.
visit in BC. So interpretation is so far different from the translation. Interpretation is the real-time translation of the text.
It's a short time to kuan ganang unlike sa translation is you have a long time or long term to think know what is the idea or how to translate. But here in interpretation,
Real time.
immediate. It requires immediate response.
It's either in oral, in words,
Or words.
or in sign language. So,
So interpretation types simultaneous. In simultaneous interpretation or SI, the interpreter renders the message in the target language as quickly as he or she can formulate it from the source language, while the source language speaker continuously speaks. So
that is common for the speaking engagement in the church.
That's right. Consecutive. In consecutive interpreting or CI, the interpreter speaks after the source language speaker has finished speaking. So the speech is divided into segments, and the interpreter sits on the stand beside the source language speaker, listening and taking notes as the speaker progresses.